白岩学園3年 B 組の皆さん、こんにちは。
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, afternoon, depending on where you are, I suppose. So, today we are at some point going to have a little chit-chat. I'm going to briefly... Alright, sorry about that. Gotta de-boomer tech, because smart people know how to do these things. At any rate, where are we? Alright, now we're all de-boomer teching. This is just fantastic. At any rate, I'm going to have a guest on in the not too distant future, though presently I'm going to open it up to Jonathan Pohl. Jonathan Pohl, check Twitter, just so as you know. At any rate, I've been checking the news over the last little while, and I'm genuinely stunned at what I'm seeing right now. Apparently there was, and I have to look further into this, I will freely admit, I talk about this rather a lot. I do listen to Tim Pool, and I frequent polls, so basically I am completely cucked, which is fine. But at any rate, yes, apparently apparently, according to something that Tim Pool had reported on, there was some kind of an incident that involved gunshots at one of these rallies or something. And I'm not referring to the guy that brandished his AK and then quickly got clapped in response in Austin, Texas. I'm not referring to that guy. Apparently there was another incident where there was some gunshots, and I have to look into that because I was, again, I'm only referring to what Tim Pool talked about. I do not know the context. Anything could be the case. But there were like over 100 gunshots, so I'm going to have to look into that. My morning has been just a touch full, so I kind of wish that I had spent a little more time doing some looking into what's going on there. That's my fault, but at any rate, the point is, yeah, they're going into the suburbs now, and I knew about them going to a policeman's house in West Covina. I think it was it West? I don't remember if it was West Covina or some other city, but in Covina, basically in East Los Angeles, Antifa types have already gone to a police officer's house and, quote, protested, end quote, whatever that means. And I also saw them at some local city. I've seen them at 2 city council persons, one in San Francisco or Oakland, though I don't recall. It was a Bay Area somewhere. And the other one was just recent. I think it was in the Pacific Northwest, but I don't recall. And apparently they also went to a police chief's house in Seattle, so I'm told. So these Antifa people, they're now going into the suburbs. They're harassing just regular workaday people living in homes. And they are going now to city officials' houses. This is a very, very dangerous and volatile situation, in my own opinion. And as we all know, these things are not pulling back at all. There's no de-escalation program, which is a huge problem. To be honest, I'm not. I'm no longer convinced that there's any way that we can reason with these people. In fact, I'm now viewing the situation as being. It's not open hostilities, in as much as the media is going to talk about it. It's not open hostilities in the sense that it's permissible to defend yourself against them. It's this very peculiar situation that we're in right now, and I know that everyone here knows it, but I'm just trying to work it through in my head, because I don't. I want to get a good handle on what I think is going on. Hey Ash, what's going down, sport? Because the way that I see things happening presently is, it looks like it's going to be completely one-sided. We all know this. I know everyone knows this, but again, I'm just working through this presently. It looks like it's all going to be one-sided, and I think that if there's going to be any, and glowies beware. I'm not advocating anything, and everyone says something nice about your Guardian Fed right now, just so we're on the same page. I'm certainly not advocating anything at all. What I'm saying is that it looks to me that if one were to be in a context in which there were hostiles moving into your community, I think that one would start adopting really hard-line measures, like active denial measures, including, and again, I'm not saying that I would do any of these things. What I'm saying is that these are the kinds of things that would logically follow if one simply, traces how things would probably work out. You would probably move into certain kinds of active denials, and it would start non-violently. It would always start non-violently. Look at the guys that, the Antifa types that went out into the Portland suburbs about a week ago. They were met by a group of just neighborhood people that, quote, escorted, end quote, them out. And they did so using nothing more than harsh language. I think a couple of small scuffles broke out, though it was nothing too terribly impressive. Nothing against them or anything. I'm not saying that they're cucks for not going hardline. I'm certainly not saying that. What I am saying is that that's where it starts. It starts with a nonviolent confrontation. It begins with the average person saying, "Hey, we don't want to deal with this." And once the fights break out, then you're talking about private property. What I mean by that is these Antifa people moving into the suburbs, they are targeting people where there is nowhere to run. Once you start targeting people, and this is, I talked about this, and everyone should be talking about this. Once you corner an animal, that animal becomes very dangerous, no matter how small that animal is. And the only reason is because the animal has nowhere to go. And we all know this. Once you have nothing to lose, you have no reason to hold back. Once these people in the suburbs are cornered, they're attacked at their homes are threatened. I think that we're going to see some form of reprisal. I think that what would probably end up happening. Ash all day. Check your Telegram, by the way. I think that we're going to see something akin to reprisal. I do. I think we're going to see reprisals. I think that in the not too distant future, because just think about it from the standpoint of you don't have anywhere to go. If you don't have anywhere to go, if you have nowhere to run, and a bunch of people have decided to just come at your house or whatever, yeah, you're going to start thinking in very defensive terms very, very quickly. And I think that's on its way. I do. This is where we are now. We're not even at the election. The election happens in November. Now, I talked a little bit the other day, yesterday I think, might have been yesterday, about how there is some kind of speculation that COVID it's the delivery mechanism for a couple of things, one of which is the mail-in voter issue. Now, with the mail-in voter deal, what are we going to see? We are going to see voter fraud, delayed elections, and more importantly, a contested election. Now, the radical left, what are they going to do? They're going to use this contested election to say, look, this is exactly what happened in 2016, and Trump is an agent of, Russia or China or whatever. It doesn't really matter at this point. A lot of rubes are going to go along with it, which is unfortunate, but this is simply the way that it goes. And when that happens, if that happens, I think that should be stated first. If that were to happen, then you would have a bunch of radical lefties say, look, we now live in a dictatorship, we now live in fascism, we now live in, whatever it is. They'll pick whatever bad word they can think of, and they'll just say, this is our time to shine. This is our time to hashtag resist, hashtag bash the fash, hashtag punch a Nazi, so on and so forth. And all of these movements into suburbs now are giving them ideas on how one deals with being in hostile territory. Once they understand what it's like to be in hostile territory, i.e. the suburbs, the things that work, the things that don't work, and so on and so forth, then you can be more, quote, effective, unquote, with regards to how you deal with hashtag bash the fash. Again, I refer to this from their standpoint. So, yeah, I think that this, I personally think that this upcoming election season is going to be one for the ages. I don't see it getting softer, because once Texas goes blue, it just gets worse from there. They're going to go through hardline socialist policies and programs or whatever. I'm convinced of this now. So for the moment, I think the only thing that we can do actually is to start seeding out the idea to our friends and family on basically what's coming. And I think that it's impossible to talk about anything regarding race. So I would stress to you, don't talk about, I guess you can talk about demographic replacement. In fact, I think that's a good place to, it's a good place to go. But the easiest is probably going to be the radical left. Probably, because that's the most visible. You can easily say that the radical left is in fact burning the cities. The radical left is in fact going to public officials' homes and harassing them where they live. You can absolutely say that the radical left is going into the suburbs. They are burning cities. They are tearing down statues. They are assaulting officers, and they are trying to defund the police while banning you guns. You can say absolutely every one of those. And you can follow all of that up with the radical left has adopted communist talking points. Once you put things in those terms, then you can start to open up for a conversation, even if it's one that does not involve race realism. And I think that's a great place to be. Personal opinion, I think that's where we need to be. Because even though I think that it should be discussed, I think that this is the driving force of politics right now, the demographic issues. I think that's the biggest issue. I don't see us as being able to have that level of discussion just yet. However, I do think that you can talk about communists, you can talk about socialists, because it doesn't have the red button issue that race has, unfortunately. And let me say one more time, and I might want to repeat this just a few more times, just to be absolutely sure. I am now no longer convinced that discussing anything with lefties is important, reasonable, or conducive. I'm now of the opinion that the only thing that we can really do is contact our own, protect our own. We ought to be, as terrible as it might be to say it in these terms, I think we're going to have to, Ash, one more time, check Telegram. We have to be thinking in terms of how to protect our own. Okay, fair enough. Ash is disposed. That is too bad. Fair enough. We have to be thinking in terms of how to protect our own. We have to be thinking in terms of how to communicate to those who are capable of understanding what is going on, those who have at least some will to defend themselves and to protect their own. So that's why, in general, once I hear a person say things like, that is racist or whatever, my immediate thought is, how long do I have to, is there any possibility of getting through to this person? If yes, how can I pink pill them on something? How can I just insert a single concept for them to ruminate over? And then after that, if it proves to be impossible to get them to think on anything at all, and when I say think on something, I don't want to convince them of anything. That's not the goal. Never do that. I've learned after about 2 years of going off on these tangents and these topics with lots of different people, the thing that I have centered on is that red pilling people is impossible. They will self-red pill. However, you can pink pill people. And one good way to pink pill people is to talk about demographic replacement. If you can't talk about demographic replacement for one reason or another, you can talk about communists and socialists. So I would say that's a good direction to a good way, a good direction to orient yourself to. It's a terrible sentence, but whatever. Ending on a proposition, but I'm not going to worry. Or preposition, I'm not going to worry about that. Orient yourself toward simply introducing a concept that will get them over time to think in such a way that they self-red pill, so that they start asking questions. You will never be there when it happens. What's the old saying? The revolution will not be televised. And I think that there is something to that concept. Now, the guy who said that, I disagree with him on a lot of points, but he did have a good observation when he said that the revolution will not be televised. The concept was that the revolution doesn't happen on air. The real revolution is a mental revolution. It happens between your ears. And it's for this reason that I say the revolution will not be televised. It'll be live streamed. It's for this reason that I say you will not be there when they red pill. Even if you're physically in the room, it happens in their heads. It happens because they take the leap. They make the decision to start thinking. They make the decision to question something. And once that question is posed, very quickly, the question, by reflex action, that question starts moving toward answers and a search for answers. That's the red pill experience. And the only thing that you can really do is set up bowling pins. It's kind of like with, I talked about this a lot in late 2018, early 2019. Like that was a big thing for me. The way that I think about it is, it's kind of like with writing a story. High-level screenwriters, they don't get pedantic. The reason that SJW movies are so shit is because they go super pedantic, didactic. They try to force feed you talking points and concepts and ideas. It's indoctrination. It's propaganda in the negative sense. And that's why it never works out, because they're basically telling you, the future is female, you have to respect women, and, minorities and oppression, so on and so forth. And I like women. I have no problems with non-whites. Like whatever people are, whatever they want to do, fine, great. I don't care. It's not a big deal to me. The issue is that they are using these as cudgels. They are using these things as weapons to attack us. That's my issue. At any rate, these guys, what they do is they go hyper-didactic, and my favorite analogy is when you're designing something for people to consume, don't give them 4. You give them 2 plus 2. Or you give them 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5. Something along those lines. You get them. You give them the necessary tools to start asking questions so that they can get to a conclusion. And I think that one of the good things about sort of pulling back a little bit and not telling people to think things is that you can get people to ask questions that you wouldn't have even thought of. You can actually start to understand things that you haven't been exposed to. This will expand your knowledge set. This will make you more effective when dealing with people, life situations, or whatever. So one of the good things about going the 2 plus 2 route as opposed to the 4 route, or does 2 plus 2 equal 5, these sorts of things. One of the benefits of that is that it also allows you on a psychological level to pull back. Like if you're wrong about something or whatever, it's a little bit easier. So it works out. It also allows the other person to pull back. One of the things that I've learned with the Red Pill experience overall is that you should not box people in, because that forces people to get defensive. So don't tell them that they're wrong. Even if they are factually wrong. Even if they are factually wrong, glaze over it. Don't worry about it. Move on. It's not a big deal, because if they start to get defensive, if you tell them that even if they are wrong, even if they're factually wrong, and even if they're egregiously factually wrong about something that could get them fucking hurt, doesn't matter. If they start to question things, if they start to think about things, they will come to reasonable conclusions over time. And then they will self-correct. And it's easier for them to do that if they are not on the defensive. So I would stress, do what you can, whenever possible, to refrain from basically cornering people. That's really what it comes down to. Because, amongst the things that you'll want to do is, and this is why I've been thinking a lot in terms of don't try to convince lefties of anything. Don't try to correct lefties. Don't try to negotiate with lefties. Don't even worry about them. In some weird way, I'm starting to think that it's just a lost cause and it doesn't matter. Can some of them be saved? Yes, absolutely. Was I a Democrat? Yes, I was a Democrat. Did I vote for Gore? Yes, I voted for Gore. God, I voted for Gore, John Kerry, Clinton. That's right. I was exactly old enough to vote for Clinton. And I also voted for, in 08. I don't think I voted in 08, but I'm pretty sure that I voted in 2012. No, I might have voted for Nader in 08. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I voted for Nader in 08. And then, because I would have voted for Ron Paul, but Ron Paul dropped out, and he sent to go and vote for whoever was third party. And then I voted for nobody in 2012, and then I voted for Trump in 2016. Anyway, my point is that I was able to go from being just a regular, normal Democrat to somebody that is a pretty paused Democrat, if I do say so myself. I'm not proud of it, but these are the things that happen. It's okay. I like to think that I'll be forgiven for it. Anyway, yes, people can come out of their days. People are capable of changing. Hashtag not all. Harry Henderson asks how old I am. I'm 42. Well, I'm about to be 42. This is my birthday month, so I'm going to be turning 42 in the next several days. Let's see here. I'm an ancient person. It's terrible. I'm old enough to remember when Nirvana first came out. I'm old enough to remember when Depeche Mode was considered cutting edge. At any rate, it is possible to red pill the normies in a way, but not really. And it is possible to get it's possible to get a couple of Democrats here and there to kind of understand what's going on, but I don't think that should be the central focus. And the only reason is because you're not going to have a lot of luck. Say what you will, there is a lot to be said for low-hanging fruit right now. And the idea is, all right, you can go for the fruit at the top of the tree. And sometimes that fruit is, it's going to be there forever, no matter what happens. And some of that fruit is going to be great to get to. And it's almost like an achievement to get the fruit at the very top of the tree. It's a little more satisfying somehow because the challenge is greater. However, I do think that we should be thinking in terms of low-hanging fruit. The reason for this is because if we are going for all of the high fruit, the high-hanging fruit, or whatever, that's a lot of time, effort, and energy that we are not spending getting raw numbers. We need raw numbers, and it takes a lot more energy. A lot more energy to get a lefty to understand things. It takes less energy to get a righty to understand things. So even though I might be accused of being opportunistic, don't care. I actually don't care. At this point, we simply need numbers. We need numbers, and we need people to simply understand that there is something that is going on, there is something that is dangerous, that is a threat, and that it must be dealt with in a very formal manner. And we're going to have more luck with that, discussing these concepts and ideas with more right-leaning people. Think of it in terms of the amygdala, high-functioning amygdala versus low-functioning amygdala. There are any number of studies that have come out that indicate that people who are left-leaning have a low-functioning amygdala. That is to say, they do not have a normal fear response. They have a low fear response. So if you talk about things like demographic replacement, so on and so forth, they don't understand. They don't care. They are incapable of identifying the threat, and the whole thing is that this does come down to a threat. So you have to start talking to people that do have a normally functioning amygdala. This means that you will have to start thinking about who are the people that are most likely to have a high-functioning amygdala. Right-leaning people. So, yeah, we need to be thinking in those terms, and I don't see any way out of it. And one of the things that has crossed my mind recently is that we need to start talking about demographic replacement of heritage Americans within the GOP. Even though I understand fully and completely that the GOP is basically cucks, even though I understand that the GOP, they are basically traitors, which I understand, it is still de facto an infrastructure that exists, and it is still nominally white, which means that it's something that it's a tool that can be wielded. And if we were to move in, basically, just move in and start making it a talking point, there would be little that could be done about it, in my own estimation. And I think that I've said this for the past couple of days now. I think that we are going to see the rise of extreme politics within the next couple of years. Again, especially once Texas goes blue in 2024. All of what's going on within this election cycle has basically caught me by surprise, and I'm still at a loss as to how to interpret it, because I've been assuming that all of this is a dry run for a revolution that's going to happen later, but it almost looks as though they are trying to sprint to the finish line prematurely, as though they are, full, Fui Gebart 1. Yeah, that's from Waterboy? I think it's Waterboy. Yeah. Aren't we all really just looking for our own Vicky Valancourt? Anyway, I think that they are sprinting for the finish line because they think that they might be able to win, or maybe they think they have to win in this election cycle. I don't know. It's really, really hard for me to get my head around all of this stuff. So I'm not convinced that this is going to be the revolution. At the same time, I am convinced that there will be a revolution, and it may or may not be this time around. I genuinely don't know. So, regardless of whether or not this is the one where we see the revolution, regardless of whether or not they try to sprint this time around, I think that the time for building infrastructure and relations is absolutely now. And maybe they'll do the COVID pass. I don't know. Maybe they'll try for their little Bolshevik revolution. I don't know. Maybe they're going to ban guns this time around. I don't know. And this, by the way, is why I think that they are going for the banning guns right now, why they're sprinting for it now, because that does fall in line with my model that this is a dry run, because you can't do everything all at once. It takes some time to kind of get people warmed up to the idea that they are about to go into hard tyranny. So this is why I keep thinking in terms of dry runs. It's just the most logical. And I just happened to notice that we have a wild Jonathan poll that has just wandered in. I'm going to de-boomer tech and get myself ready to chit-chat with Mr. Poll. Just getting everything set up. I think I just have to make sure that all the audio is taken down and out. Very good. All right, let's loop in Jonathan. Hey, buddy.
Hello?
What's going down?
Not much. Just finished some Vietnamese noodles. Caught me right when I was preparing them.
Nice. So you had some pho.
Yes, however you pronounce it.
I'm told it's pronounced pho by a reliable source. I'm willing to go along with it just because it seems the most reasonable thing to do. Go along to get along, right?
Yeah. Although, it may differ depending on what part of Vietnam they are. Because I've heard pho.
Really?
Yeah. But I don't know. It's irrelevant. My knowledge of Southeast Asian languages is virtually nil.
Yeah, It's not my burning passion.
So, what's going down? I think we need to listen to Old Man Trotsky about the need for greater minority representation.
I heard about that. I saw that tweet. That was one heck of a tweet. Boy, howdy. For those
I wish I could find the original source. It does sound like something that Trotsky would say, that it's looking bad that all of the people doing the executions are Jewish and all the people being executed are non-Jewish. So we should throw in some more Jews to be executed to make it look not so bad.
Yeah. And for those who are unaware, the tweet is of some text, and the text reads, after Trotsky's Politburo protest, the Kiev Cheka received an order prohibiting the appointment of Jews to top Cheka posts and requiring, for propaganda reasons, the token execution of Jews, parenthetical, previously only one Jew had been executed by the Kiev Cheka, end parenthetical. This example highlights the fact that the Cheka organizations did not operate in a vacuum. And that's basically the end of the quote there. To be sure, I'm certainly not advocating anything. I'm just reading a quotation by somebody else. But yeah, having quotas in that context, well, that doesn't seem wonderful at all for a lot of reasons. I guess the chief of which is, geez, man. I mean, if you have to have execution quotas because you're killing too many of one side, that seems pretty bad.
Yeah, it looked quite bad. I mean, there are other quotations from Trotsky talking about how bad it looked that most of the Cheka in many places was Jewish, and that this was giving mobilization support for their enemies, that they allowed the armies of Denikin in particular to mobilize many opponents against the Bolsheviks.
That's not wonderful. I've been thinking about the, well, basically just what's going on here. I can't help it. I'm essentially just like obsessed with what's going on right now. I mean, somebody was saying something about how, what are you worried about your own skin? It's like, well, yeah, damn right I'm worried about my own skin. And right now, like, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. You were talking about the struggles sessions, and
yeah.
Right now, I don't see them happening just yet, not in those terms, but I would swear we're moving in those directions. Did you hear about there's a police chief? Antifa went to a police chief's house to protest at a police chief's house in like Seattle. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, you brought this up last time.
No. That was a police
I haven't
officer.
seen any news.
No, that was a police officer in Covina. I'm talking about a police chief in Seattle in a totally different state.
Oh. No, I haven't heard that one either.
Yeah, I only just heard about this today. It might have been last night. Recently.
No, I did see that Seattle City Council has voted to eliminate the police. So.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how that works.
Well, the way that I'm imagining it is they want to, because the assumption is that because systemic racism, all law enforcement is inherently evil. So what you do is you simply delete evil. Once you delete evil, then you can rebuild and make something good. So delete evil. The end. That's it.
Yeah, but they're not like calling for elimination of all law enforcement. They specifically say the police.
Correct.
I don't see them making any push to eliminate the FBI, for instance, which they pretty much control.
Well, yeah. I mean, and to be fair, this sounds like you're giving me 2 + 2. The way that I'm looking at the elimination of police is they simply want to have control of all violence, all state violence. That's the way that I look at it. So remove the police and you remove the majority of localized state violence. The other is that by eliminating the police, you eliminate local law enforcement. You eliminate localized state violence programs to enforce laws. By eliminating the local law enforcement, that opens the door for what? Federal police.
Right.
NKVD.
Extraordinary Commission to Combat Counter-Revolution.
Yeah, exactly. And once you've got federalized police, well, I mean,
And then at that point, the best we can do is like Trotsky and say, it doesn't look real good that you're only killing white people. Throw in some more black people to execute.
I reject that possibility as being anything worthy of consideration.
Okay.
Only because I would Yeah, I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to be forced into a pure defensive situation, which sadly it looks like that is where we are. I don't see any way out of that at this point.
I did see also they want to eliminate all history classes in the state of Illinois.
Really?
Yeah, some representative claimed that all the history courses were racist by definition, so they should all be abolished.
I mean, it makes sense. That's their program. Their program is to declare everything racist, and then anything that is declared racist, you simply eliminate it. You delete, you destroy.
Yeah, but that means if they eliminate all the history classes in Illinois, that takes out potential for my job market. Not that it's great anyways, but...
Well, I guess just stay out of Illinois. Which you should be doing anyway. Illinois is not a good place to be.
Oh, man. I'm hoping the thing gets so bad in South Chicago they beg me to come.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Tough to say these days. Yeah. Well, anyway, so that's, I guess, more or less what's going on out here. I wanted to ask you about the... okay, so in terms of general progressions, historically speaking, once you had all of the... In Weimar Republic, you had the big Spartacus revolt in like 1918, 1919, right? Isn't that more or less what had happened?
Correct. Yes, under Liebknecht and Luxembourg, who were both extrajudicially executed by the Freikorps.
Okay. And after that, there was the Weimar Republic days. So the socialists went hard line. They went crazy, and they kind of...
the socialists split.
What's that?
The socialists split.
How so?
There was a split between the Social Democratic Party, which had a majority in the Reichstag already under the Second Reich. Well, the monarch was still in power during the war. And then there was a radical split called the Independent Social Democratic Party under Liebknecht. And they became the Communist Party. So you had, in the beginning, Ebert, the first president of Weimar, Germany. He was responsible for putting down the communist revolt. He was with the majority Social Democrats and basically smashing this splinter from his own party, the Independent Social Democrats, that became the Spartacists and then the Communists.
So they split. Okay. I wonder about splits going on now.
I don't know. I saw that the Revolutionary Communist Party leader Bob Avakian has endorsed Joe Biden.
I mean, that makes sense, but their entire goal is just general destruction anyway. So whatever will favor general destruction is what is going to be advocated. So the DNC was saying that their program regarding firearms is that they just want like full-faced bans. They didn't say confiscation, so they're going to allow grandfathering in, but just normal wear and tear entropy will slowly start to take firearms out, and it'll be increasingly difficult to either replace them or to get replacement parts. And they want to implement a national background check. Here in California, the background checks that we have, rather the way that the gun laws are structured here, you have to have a background check every time you purchase ammunition, and in like 2 years every time you purchase gun parts. So for all intents and purposes, we have a gun registry. And once you've got a gun registry, no, they're not. I mean, outside of the red flag laws, they're not confiscating now, but those, first they came for the criminals. No, they don't have confiscations now, but it's not hard to imagine that they would just say, okay, well, I guess we can do it now. We know where everyone lives. We know what everyone's buying, so we'll just do it. Anyway, the DNC, they are moving into a direction that is near identical to what we have here in California. So I just imagine that over time, they're absolutely going to push for a de facto registry. And by that I again mean every time you purchase ammunition or parts, you will have to undergo a background check. That information will be sent to whatever agency they set up, and they'll have a list, and they'll know everyone's addresses and what everyone has. So, there are going to be no more uppers capable Guardian at all. And the reason for this is because uppers themselves will be classified as precursor parts. That's the phrase that they use, precursor parts. So it's not a firearm. It's a precursor part that will get you to a firearm.
Can't you just print out firearms now? Do you have a 3D printer?
I personally don't have a printer. It's worth making mention that 3D printers, they are capable of printing firearms that will last for approximately 2,000 rounds, if you get a good one.
I thought they were getting better, that the receivers had been improved.
They're getting a little bit better, but they're not perfect. My favorite is the FGC-9. I love the FGC-9. That one, it's basically a, how do I phrase this? It's a really weird little thing. The receiver takes Glock mags in a manner similar to a Tech 9. It's got a fairly short barrel, like, 5 to 8 inches at most. And the recoil spring is actually a buffer tube from like an AR or something. It's a really weird little, it looks kind of funny, to be honest. And I don't know how durable the receiver is on that, because that's the part that's probably going to break the fastest, is going to be the receiver. Because that's where the most force is going to be. I think anyway. So I don't know what the long term is on the FGC-9, but assuming that the FGC-9 actually does have some durability, I think it's probably going to be a good direction to go. After that, what you end up thinking about, what one would end up thinking about, I'm absolutely not advocating anything at all. Again, say hello to your local glowies. After that, it becomes an issue of ammunition. Do you have access to ammunition? And if we start moving into a federal registry for ammunition, even if you print your own, they know how many rounds you're purchasing, so they'll know who the weekend warriors are. You can load your own ammunition, but that takes a little tiny workshop, and it takes some people actually doing it full time. And once you start going into manufacture, that's a whole different level. If you're selling any of it, that becomes a big problem. If you're doing it on your own, it's not.
What if you're using it to arm your well-organized and ordered militia as guaranteed by the Constitution?
Well, but the Constitution doesn't matter anymore. They're openly against. Reloads don't matter, by the way, Brian Frakes. It's the same problem. It's all the same problem. The Constitution means nothing. The Bill of Rights means nothing. We no longer have free speech. We no longer have the right to keep and bear arms. This is in paper only. So, as far as I'm concerned, any pleas to laws mean nothing, because the McCloskeys in St.
Well, I don't think that's true. You're right that the Constitution officially, the one from the 1789, has been supplanted. But it's been supplanted by written legislation as well. I mean, basically, we just replaced it with the 1964 Civil Rights Act and everything that came out of that.
But even that is mutable. Everything is mutable. Here in California,
can't everything be mutable? Because I mean, I suppose you can for a temporary period of time, but eventually there has to be some sort of guidelines. I mean, if we
no,
look
but
at
you're,
the,
you're operating in good faith. You're a person who is operating in good faith and imagining.
I'm not operating in good faith, but one of the problems why there was almost collapse of the Soviet Union after Stalin died is because they were going on these arbitrary rules of Stalin himself. And so the first thing that Khrushchev pushed for was the creation or recreation, as he stated it, of socialist legality. That is, the tyranny needed some rules to follow by, or else it would eat its own members and self-destruct.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be
And then
some.
you saw the same thing in China when Deng Xiaoping came to power after Mao died. The institution of socialist legality.
No, I mean, I agree. They're going to have to do that, but that's only going to be relative to themselves. It's only going to be relative to them. They're still going to outlaw all dissent. They're going to outlaw self-defense. So you can kiss the Second Amendment goodbye functionally. It's just gone. It'll exist on paper only, and that's it. The way that they'll deal with it is you can purchase a firearm, but you must have the proper paperwork. You have to have the correct permits. And by an amazing coincidence, the people that are going to be in control of issuing permits are going to be utterly hostile to us.
Right, I can see how that works. That's like the Soviet law that gave freedom of residency provided you had a proper propuska, and then certain whole groups were denied propuska systematically.
Correct. That's exactly where we are going. All you have to do is look at California. This is precisely what's happening in California. I live in Los Angeles. Take a gander. Take a wild guess. Look around and ask yourself who gets permits for concealed carry.
But there is a strength, and this was used greatly in the Soviet Union by the dissident movement. Once you find out what are their the laws, the legality which they are upholding, if you can show where they systematically violated it, it can turn them into knots.
Into what?
Because they will not admit to violating it. They will attempt to contort themselves in an extreme manner. But in the way they do this is extremely weakening to their legitimacy, particularly to outsiders.
Right. Well, I suppose that the appropriate thing to do, and I don't like pointing out hypocrisy anymore, simply because I find it to be fruitless. Like, nobody fucking cares. No one cares. But I mean, at the same time, you're kind of right. Pointing out hypocrisy undermines their claims of legitimacy. I do agree with that. Maybe there's some way to capitalize on that. I'm really not sure. Because at the moment, like,
it doesn't convince them.
Well, but it's not going to have.
But it can convince outsiders.
Yeah, it's not going to convince anybody here, and the outsiders, like, who cares what somebody else says about how corrupt the DNC is? Who cares? Nobody gives a shit. Let's say that you convinced someone that they're corrupt and they're duplicitous hypocrites and so on and so forth. So most of the other countries they're hostile to guns. The only people that are pro-gun these days are just radical right-wingers. That's really about it.
Yeah, but I think you're missing kind of another group. There are because I've seen recently a number of academics kind of defect away from the mainstream left over to our side, and it's been because of this issue of complete incoherence of any type of narrative on the type of the left that stands up to any type of scrutiny or even agrees with itself.
You're gonna have to spell that out for me. I didn't have the best breakfast today, so I'm a little bit out of it.
There are people that are not part of the power establishment, but who have gone along with it because that's just the easiest thing to do. But then have recently defected away from it because the narrative has become so convoluted, so contorted, and so incoherent that they just say, fuck it, we can't follow it.
All right. So what you're saying is maybe continue all of the discussions on hypocrisy so that people who are new defectors, the newly defected will, or people that are on the brink of defecting, will have greater cause.
People that are what's the word I want to use? People that are not the undecided camp. It can push them over.
All right. I mean, I'm okay with that. That sounds like a good call. Also, I just want to throw this out there way up in the chat. Bear Sinjetric said that the only part that requires serialization is a receiver, so he thought. Yes. Brian Frakes says lower and receiver are functionally the same thing. There's no real difference as far as I know. And firing pins do not need to be serialized outside of California, though in California, technically firing pins are supposed to have numbers attached to them. That's a magic technology that doesn't exist in reality. So the firearms that are sold in California have super special exemptions so that they are able to be sold without the magic technology that doesn't exist. And that's called microstamping for the 7 people here that are unaware of it. Microstamping is this concept where the firing pin has a micronized stamp that is on the tip of the firing pin that imprints onto the bullet casing, so that each bullet has information as to the manufacturer, type, and make, and probably the owner as well. But that's fucking retarded, because all you have to do is just take the firing pin out, scrape it on the ground a couple of times, and then boom, there goes your microstamping. It's gone. It's over. It requires like a simple tool. I mean, you probably don't even to do that. You can probably just like force the firing pin out a little bit and get some like 2000 grit sandpaper and just rub down the tip of it, while it's still not even taken down. You'd probably get rid of it that way. It's a stupid technology anyway. Yeah, but that doesn't actually matter, because serializing gun parts doesn't matter if all of them need a background check. Again, here in California, quote, precursor parts, end quote, will require a background check. So if you have a problem with a return spring or a barrel or a trigger group or whatever, if you have problems with any of those parts in about 2.5 years and you need to replace something on your AR or your Glock or whatever, you will have to go through a background check for your trigger group. You will have to go through a background check on what's that little guy that latches onto a shell casing? An extractor. If you have an extractor malfunction and you need, or even a spring for an extractor, it's going to require a background check. So it doesn't matter if it's serialized. The DOJ will know that you purchased an extractor. They'll know that you own something. That's the point. So it doesn't matter if it's serialized. At any rate, Sorry, I must have swallowed something or breathed something. It's weird.
Maybe one of them bugs that they want us to all eat.
Yeah. So at any rate, yeah. So going into like all the contortions of like displaying hypocrisy, I really think that that's going to be a kind of I don't know. I mean, I guess
You can't use it to convince them. But as I said, you could convince people that have gone along with the ruling narrative because obviously you go along with the power to make it easiest. But if the narrative is so incoherent that even a university professor can't follow it, it's going to have fewer followers.
Yeah. I keep thinking to myself that.
Well, I just know because I got followed by somebody I've known for a while, and she's was a huge Democrat just a couple of years ago, and now she's flipped completely over. And she's
Really?
she's a Spanish language professor. She's actually from Ukraine originally, but she's at a state university in the Midwest. And I was kind of surprised that she had on her blog, which I hadn't looked at in a couple of years, all of these posts on how she had finally just got fed up with the incoherent anti-white narrative of the left and how it had no sense to follow, and it was just based upon the hatred of white people, and that she was just saying fuck it.
Well, that's great news. That's brilliant news. This sort of.
And she did say the reason that she had gone along with it because she's an immigrant who came from Ukraine to Canada, and right. So then she was an academic, and everybody around her and all the media, right, there was this one particular echo chamber. But it became so incoherent and twisted and self-contradictory that she started looking at right-wing literature, and then she found that everything she'd been told about right-wing literature was a lie, and she flipped.
Nice. That's funny. Like I kind of want to. If you have the ability to converse with her, maybe by email or something, or something like that, and like, because I wouldn't want to damage her reputation by doxing her, but it would be interesting to get a gauge as to what she thinks. It would be interesting to hear
she has a public blog and a public Twitter that goes under Clarissa blog, I think, which is not her real name, by the way. So,
well, I should hope not. Well, that's great news. So so that whole thing of the incoherency of the radical left, it does seem to be, because this is one of my issues. Like back when I was still sympathetic, I guess, to Democrats all the way back in like 2013, 2014 or whatever. I was watching a John Oliver, and this is when I was formerly an unhyphenated anarchist. I stress unhyphenated anarchist, which on a spiritual level I still basically am, even though I fully recognize the necessity of hierarchies these days. Whatever, qualifiers aside, doesn't matter. Moving on. I remember thinking to myself, okay, so if the police have no duty to protect me or anyone that I know, then obviously firearms ownership is not only logical but laudable. It's a good thing. One should own a firearm, because if the police are not going to protect you, then you need to be able to protect yourself. And so I started talking about that within progressive circles, and boy howdy, even as a person who is yeah, exactly, Bigot Small says high trust anarchy. That's the only way that it would work, so unfortunately it's completely impossible, but whatever. And that's actually why I ended up rejecting anarchism, is because in this society it's completely impossible, and it would only be feasible in a high IQ, high agency society. So basically,
provided the entire population of society was like 100 people.
yes, that's the other issue, is that once you have anything larger than...
there are historically there have been high IQ homogenous societies that have been very functional, but they weren't anarchist. I mean, Sweden, Denmark, these were not anarchist societies before immigration.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, oh shit, I had a thought pattern is gone. Oh yeah, that's right. The progressives, they started hounding me because I was a firearms proponent, and I got a lot of shit from that. And I was like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, look at crime, look at the way that it's going, and like, if you're genuinely concerned about everyone being a Nazi or a fascist or whatever, wouldn't you want to have the ability to defend yourself against tyranny, however you define it? And they're like, that's terrible, only a Nazi would say such a thing. It's like, fuck off, man. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you're going to bitch and moan about tyrannical this and that's, the least you can do is offer some fucking self-defense. They can't even do that. It's like, once they started doing that, and John Oliver, he had a big episode on gun control way back in like 2014, and once I saw that, like, on a dime, I flipped immediately, and I was like, no, I don't support Democrats at all anymore. It was really weird. Like, it happened on a dime, and strangely enough, it came down to gun control, oddly enough. Anyway, but yeah, that's, I guess, an example of
well, this particular woman, the Spanish literature professor, was first the bullshit over COVID, followed by the Black Lives Matter riots and the Antifa violence in Portland and Seattle. So very recently, but it was a hard flip.
How old is she?
I gotta say, maybe a little younger than you, but so maybe about your age. So maybe,
really?
But she's younger than I am.
Well, that's interesting. Usually, people are set in their political views by like mid-20s or 30s or so. So she's a little bit past what one would normally expect for a big transition. But that's good news. That means that the possibility for people, noticing what's going on, at least on some level, noticing what's going on, that possibility exists. That's brilliant news. That actually suggests that all of the shit posting on Twitter is not for nothing. Well, that's great.
Yeah, well, I guess not. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that the pointing out the inconsistencies, the self-contradictions is not a complete loss. It's just not going to convince the people that are mouthing it. But there may be people around them that have gone along with it because, well, that's the only narrative they've been exposed to in the U.S.
Yeah.
But eventually it'd be like, well, this makes no sense. Let's see what the stuff that they were saying was so bad and evil. What did they say? And lo and behold, it makes more sense. So in that sense, you can get movement.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of my views, they've shifted wildly along those lines as well, partly because of that whole thing, actually, of thou shalt not read, X book or listen to Y person or whatever. And I ended up looking into certain books and people and idea sets and realizing it's actually completely logical. It's completely coherent. RBC, is that the bullpup? The RBC, that's the rearward ejecting bullpup C. That is, I actually do want a bullpup, in all honesty. Though if I was going to get one, I would probably, because I don't like Kel-Tecs in general. I think what I'd probably end up doing is going like urbanite survivalist. So I actually think that this is going to sound silly, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. I honestly think that a Ruger 1022 put into a bullpup configuration is perfectly reasonable. And the concept is that you have something that is very maneuverable, something that probably won't overpenetrate. Like if a bad thing happens, it probably won't overpenetrate. And in a situation that is more or less where I am, which is either urban or semi-urban, or even all the way into suburban, I would only be dealing with relatively short distances of maybe 100 yards at most. So I wouldn't actually need anything that's going to reach out and touch anyone. As long as you're feeding CCI through it, it should be fine theoretically. But that's just my own thought. I mean, who knows? It doesn't really matter. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all armchair commando bullshit. Bigot Smalls, the what is it? The High Point, the High Point 9mm carbine. Yeah, these things are ridiculous. I almost want to get one just because it'd be a funny meme gun. Anyway, but yeah, I think the whole thing with people flipping, yeah, I guess it's a good thing to continue thinking in those terms. But okay, so getting the radical left to turn in on itself by pointing out their contradictions, like, how long does it even take? Like, in the Soviet Union, that took what, like a decade or something? And even then,
well, the use of that particular strategy started already in the late 1950s, around 56, 57. And so it took about 30 years for it to effectively have any noticeable force. But obviously it panicked the Soviets in international forum already in the 1970s, particularly things like the World Psychiatric Association. They expelled the Soviet Union, and there's also the fact that they lost the support of the Islamic world after '79 with the invasion of Afghanistan. But internally, they had to rewrite their laws again because they had given too much legality, so there was too much room to legally dissent. So in the 1960s, they had to come up with new laws, but there were still a lot more loopholes than there had been under Stalin, and they never dared to go back to that kind of arbitrary mass terror because they were afraid it would eat themselves.
well, so this is a major problem, though, because what you end up with is there's going to be a reign of terror, mass murders, insanity, followed by a bunch of people bitching and moaning. Basically, an entire generation of people bitching and moaning that their parents were massacred. And only after a full generation do people start to say, yeah, well, I guess murdering people is bad. Like, that's not cool. I don't find that to be acceptable.
I suppose so, but I mean, we've kind of shrunk history down into, everything is being done in 24 hours. 30 years is actually not that long a time. There was a war fought in what is now Germany that lasted 30 years, called the 30-Year War.
Well, yeah, but we're looking at that in America. We're looking at that possibility in America, and like we actually have to live through it. Like, I don't want to deal with 30 fucking years.
Well, the Cultural Revolution in China and its aftermath was about 10 years, so 1966 to 1976.
Oh my god. This sounds so lame. So the way that I'm hearing this then is we may well end up in a situation where we may have to just live through a bunch of absolute bullshit for the next, like, decade or two, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Because there's not been the type of serious pushback that I think would stop it yet.
Well, yeah, obviously not. I mean, going into suburban areas, that doesn't seem wonderful in the least. And if they're willing to do that now, before there's any hostilities, I mean, my God, once they start declaring white people as kulaks, and once they start, I mean, not that it will happen, I'm saying, like, because that sounds very fatalistic on my part, like it's going to happen. You know, it may or may not, I'm really not sure, but on a rhetoric level, it does seem like they are oriented in that direction. It seems like they're just saying, well, fuck white people, it's just erase their history. Once you erase their history, it's pretty easy to start erasing white people in general. That's just what it looks like on a superficial level. And it's like, well, shit, if they're willing to move in these directions on a language level, it won't take long for them to start doing it on a physical level. That sucks, man. And the idea that we're going to have to point out fucking inconsistencies as that, like, oh, they're murdering more white people than anybody else. Like, what the fuck, man? That sounds like an awful situation to be in. I don't want to have to point out that they're being hypocrites because they're disproportionately murdering some people more than other people. Like, that's an awful place to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not advocating that it be the only thing we do, but I do think it has some limited utility. I don't think it's completely without benefit.
We need to have, like, our own propaganda wing, man. This sucks.
Yeah, the problem is we got nobody on the right who is serious about putting their money to support even like basic research and writing and dissemination of ideas and counter institution building. All our guys became rich by being grifters, so they continue to be grifters because that's what they know.
Yeah, that really sucks. At the moment, the way that I'm seeing everything go down. Okay. Brian Frakes is saying,
these guys would rather, continue to grift so they can make more money than to put out a few $1,000s to do something worthwhile.
Yeah, we need.
And literally, I mean, that's literally where 99.9% of them are.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't get anywhere, because, like, look at Bezos' wife. She's putting up billions of dollars for these left-wing terrorist organizations. Can you imagine a right-wing billionaire said, "Okay, I'm serious. I'm gonna build, I'm gonna give billions of dollars. I'm gonna build a university to counter the left-wing narrative. I'm going to build a right-wing media. I'm going to provide support to right-wing intellectuals." It hasn't ever happened.
Yeah, it's very, very frustrating. My biggest issue with everything right now really is that the best we can offer is shit posting on fucking Twitter. Facebook, everything just gets shut
we don't
down.
even own.
I know, exactly. And even then, like, I find myself...
People get knocked off Twitter all the time.
Precisely. I'm very careful about who I respond to and how. I'm very I've got, 1,000 people or something following me on Twitter. or whatever. Nothing against anyone on Twitter. Obviously, I'm on that fucking cesspit. It's terrible, but it is the case. I am on that cesspit. I am on Twitter. And, let's see, let's take a look. Okay, so 1,060. So 1,060 people follow me. And of that 1,060...
Suppose there was a right-wing equivalent of some of these lefties, right? And he said, I'll tell you what, Eki, I'll give you $80,000 a year, and your job is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, to write, newspaper editorials for this newspaper I'm starting that I'm going to distribute on the internet and in print to compete, right? Or whatever, something serious. Right? That would be a lot more productive.
Absolutely, it would. I'm completely on board. I love it. I mean, conceptually, anyway. I wish.
And if the guy's making $1 million a day, $80,000 a year is nothing. It's like pocket change.
Yeah. No, we need that, but we don't have that. That's the problem. We just don't have that. We've got a bunch of virtue signaling, fucking conservatives that are like, I'm totally
right.
Not
Did you
racist.
see? Was it something? I think it was the American Conservative that it didn't matter what the actual real conditions of Black Americans were. It only mattered that they felt they were being oppressed, and therefore the oppression was real.
Yeah.
What type of bullshit is that?
Well, but she was a tribeswoman, so.
Oh, but that was the newspaper that Buchanan and Taki founded back in the. I don't know. I think it was in the 1990s. I remember seeing it in the early 2000s when it was still under their control.
I mean, on the plus side, the same duplicity that we're seeing in the radical left will also be seeing in the conservative spheres. That is to say, people reacting negatively to the duplicity. I assume we'll start seeing that in the conservative spheres soon enough. I hope. But not that even matters, because we still have the issue of we just don't have any way to disseminate ideas. And I think that's actually the biggest issue. In all honesty, I genuinely think that one of the biggest issues that we face...
Right, but one of the reasons we don't is because we don't have people on our side with money buying these platforms to disseminate ideas like the left has done.
Oh my god. And you were
I mean,
yeah.
Why, we could look at all of the universities as what's called endowed chairs, and we'll see all kinds of left-wing endowed university chairs. And sometimes these are very, very expensive, but they're basically putting their own professor, the guy that they like, in the permanent position where he can't be removed and where he will be able to conduct research and publishing and teaching from this, right? The right wing doesn't do that ever.
Oh, I know. Believe you me, I know. I like how a couple days ago you were implicitly chiding me on your stream about don't be like AK, don't be black pilled, and here you are basically force feeding me black pills. Thank you.
I'm not force feeding you black pill. I'm telling you that the quote unquote leadership of the right, the people that have money, they're pretty worthless because they got their money through grifting, and so all they know is grifting, and they continue to grift rather than do productive things with their money.
So, is that good news or is that bad news?
Well, I suppose we recognize as good news is that we recognize the problem.
Okay.
The problem is it doesn't look like there's ever going to be. I mean, if we just had one guy to start with, that would be good. I mean, there were people that looked like they might be, but they turned out to be worthless, like the Cox brothers, John Basil Utley. I mean, these people didn't do anything.
All right. I wonder if there's any way that we can. Well, I was going to say if there's any way we can get around that. If there's any way that we can either. I mean, but we can't. We don't.
No, I don't think so. It's almost because as I said, it's the mindset. Because the way they get the money is through grifting. So
Yeah.
that's like they decide that you continue to do that forever, rather than anything else.
So I don't. I like thinking in terms of solutions. That's really what I'm trying to aim for these days. Even if it's something that's tiny, I want something that is visible, attainable, something that hopefully has the ability to be implemented, even if only by one person. So, unfortunately, I mean no offense to you directly in any way. I'm just saying that so these are incredible problems, and there's no way to deal with them. So I'm not saying that we ignore them. I'm just saying that there's no getting around it at the moment, which is fine. But I would like to think about things that do have at least some possibility of being, implemented, enacted, executed, whatever you want to say. That whole thing you're talking about with pointing out hypocrisy, and at the very least, getting people on the verge of flipping to flip because they are, they can no longer ignore the hypocrisy. That seems like something that has like tangible results. Like that's something you can do, and something.
Correct. I think the big thing there is the targeting. It doesn't do any good to go to the radical left. You can point out hypocrisy all day long to people like Vouch. It's just not gonna do any good. But the people that are like surrounded in this, but kind of milieu, but are not committed to it ideologically, but only opportunistically. I think they can be swayed. And I think you can convince Sean King that he's actually white, which he is.
That would be a hell of a thing. That would be one hell of a thing. Well, I'm not interested in people who are opportunistically anything. I'm only interested in people who believe things. So I guess for me, my thinking nowadays is I just want to focus on people that are good faith actors and who want a better future for their kids, basically. I mean, it sounds very trite to say it out loud that way, but I think that's the only, and people who recognize it openly. I know a lot of parents that they go along with all of the woke talking points, and they don't seem to understand how all of this stuff is going to negatively impact their kids once their kids reach college age. They don't seem to be thinking in those terms.
I don't know if they're going to be universities as we understand it in 10 years from now.
Well, I generally agree, though. What do you think is going to happen? Because your conception and my conception are basically going to not be identical, because my views are obviously very different from yours. So what do you see as being the future of universities?
I see a lot of them, particularly the private ones, going bankrupt. I mean, they were going bankrupt already before COVID, but this has really been a nail in the coffin. I see a lot of businesses. I notice Google now are going to be offering their own training programs that the substitute. I say like you can now get a certificate from Google in 3 months, which they will consider to be equal to most state universities 4-year degrees for hiring, and it costs like $300 as opposed to what is it, 40,000.
Well, that seems reasonable, though. I've been thinking for a long time about how I lament that there's no longer, what is it, oh gosh, in the
But
medieval...
what's going to really shrink is going to be the place where liberal arts should have been the strongest, where university education should have been focused, the idea of the classics and critical thinking. So what's going to completely disappear is going to be like anybody with knowledge of the Western canon, and things like history are going to be totally abolished. Nobody will take any history courses anymore. They're going to get rid of them.
Dude, actually, I went over to, oh God, Paul Beckman, settle down, buddy. I went to a store recently, and I'm trying to get through Dostoevsky's The Possessed, or The Devils, or The Demons, depending on which translation you have. And
right.
Pretty good novel, by the way. I got through the first quarter or third, and I ended up having all these problems with remembering which character was what and what. And it's like he just introduces so many fucking characters.
Maybe you should just have like, well, Dostoevsky's been long dead, but you could have like advised him to just put numbers. So Ivan Pervoy, Ivan Vittorny.
Yeah. No,
Ivan.
The way that I'm going to organize it is in terms of associations and groups. So I'm going to have, where you've got a central hub and then you've got little nodes going off of that hub. I'm going to have to do that with the characters. It's going to be a hell of a thing, but whatever. It's all going to come down to associations. It's going to be a big giant thing, whatever. Anyway, so I'm going through Dostoevsky's...
Have you read Turgenev? I think his fathers and sons only has 4 characters.
Nice. I might go in that direction. So I was reading that at my local Trader Joe's, and the young woman who was ringing me up, she asked me what book I was reading. I showed it to her, and she said, "Oh, who is that? I've never read that." I had a brief discussion with her, and I came to find out that she was like an English major or something like that, or maybe she had a background in schooling or whatever. She's like maybe she was a TA and was involved with it. I don't remember. It was something like that. But
you've never heard of Fyodor Dostoevsky?
Correct. I started
probably the second greatest writer in the Russian language.
Correct. And I started listing off other books that he had wrote. She didn't even know Crime and Punishment.
Oh, really?
Yes. This is a person who's gone through, even if she wasn't a TA, even if she was just a person that went through English studies, never heard of Dostoevsky. It's over. It's all over. People don't read this shit. Like, we're so far past all of it now. It doesn't fucking matter anymore.
I was outside the country in exile. I'm like Lenin coming to catch up here.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to describe how eviscerated American culture is these days, how eviscerated European culture is. People don't read books at all. I can almost guarantee you, if you and anyone in this chat were to go to your local coffee shop, grocery store, pick something. It doesn't matter. Find a place, go to it. Start asking people who has read Kurt Vonnegut, Salinger, Philip K. Dick, Twain. Start asking about these names that would have been very common back in the 1980s. I can guarantee you that less than a quarter of them will have even heard of them, much less read them. I promise you, this is not a joke. I'm not fucking with you in the least.
How did we slide so far in 40 years?
Well, there's the easy thing of, blame MTV and so on. But basically, the way that I look at it is there's been a concerted effort to destroy academia. That's the way that I look at it. So it's all about dumbing people down. Stop talking about literature, start talking about racism. And that's where we are now.
Let's see. So are you saying there's not enough cultural capital to even begin to try and reorganize for restoration?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, what would a person do?
So are we like to the Irish monks? We retreat to the monastery and just copy everything and hope that things will get better eventually, or what?
I mean, I'm not saying that verbally, but that does. I mean, that's not as crazy as it sounds, in my estimation. I mean, I had to go through and tell people that Dostoevsky was a person, that he existed. I mean,
the 3 of the books, the top 5 books checked out by Russian prisoners are by Dostoevsky. No, 3 of the I think the top 10. But like number 2, 3, and 4 were by I think Dostoevsky, and there was Tolstoy on there. The first one was Master and Margarita, it was by Bulgakov. 3 Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo were the 2 by non-Russian, both by the Octroon Alexander Dumas. So you're saying Russian prisoners are okay, the guys with the tattoos and that are engaged in hits for hire are much better read people than most Americans at this point.
Yeah, basically, prisoners in other countries are better read than us. Yes, that is absolutely the case.
That's not good.
I heard a rumor by Bear Singetorix that Casio was just bought out by a Swiss Jewish luxury brand. I reject that totally. That cannot possibly be the case. So, Bear Singetorix, you just triggered me, and I'm literally shaking right now. Anyway, I think the only thing that we can, it's kind of a good thing that all of the schools are in free fall collapse, because this is a great opportunity to start getting kids to read real books. It's my own opinion that, I mean, you're saying that, yeah, we retreat to the monasteries. Kind of. And we start getting our kid, we start reading these books and stories to kids. They don't have, I mean, my God, can you imagine not reading Grimm's fairy tales? I don't think kids are reading Grimm's fairy tales at all. I was talking with a guy in his 30s. He's either mestizo or castizo, I'm not sure which. Or late 20s. He's in his late 20s. Never read Brothers Grimm. Very Americanized, speaks English mostly. The slightest accent, but basically American for all intents and purposes. No, there's no. He doesn't know any of the things on a literary level. He doesn't know any of the things that you know at all. The end, period. There's no common ground anymore. And even among the white people, because that chick that I was talking with who didn't know who Dostoevsky was, she was a white chick. Same exact problem. They don't know any of these books. They don't know these authors. And this is simply the way that it is. I don't see any way out of it right now other than to start afresh with a new generation and start reading kids, Brothers Grimm, and stuff like that. Seriously, I don't see any other option. I'm not joking.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't realized that the generations that came after me had such poor education.
No, it's really, really bad. I mean, think about all of these Antifa types. How many of them do you think are reading Dostoevsky?
Well, they've memorized Marx and Lenin and Avakian.
Yes. Okay, good. There you go. All right, so they are memorizing those guys. Do you think they are reading Dostoevsky?
Well, that's how if you're gonna be a communist, you should know all the Russian canon: Pushkin, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy. These books were all widely published, and
they're reading. They're reading Howard
the Soviet
Zinn.
Union.
No, they're reading Howard Zinn. They're reading White Fragility. That's what they're reading. They're reading Harry Potter.
I thought she got canceled.
Well, fair enough. I don't know what they're reading these days, but their idea of literature is like Marvel comic books. And I don't mean Marvel comic books circa like 1999 and previous. I mean Marvel comic books like 2010 and later.
I'm not familiar with them. Okay.
I'm just saying, like, it's stark what's going on right now. Very, very stark.
So you're saying that somebody with a university degree from the U.S. in English will know fewer world authors than somebody with a university degree in history from Ghana by a order of magnitude.
Very likely, yes. I don't like talking about my own personal life, but I will just say that I am uneducated in the formal sense. So I'm pretty much just some dude off the street, and I know more about grammar, punctuation, history, and literature than a shitload of people that have graduated university. In most cases, I know more than them. And I'm just some guy. These people are literally paying tens of thousands of dollars to be fed lines of bullshit to them, and they genuinely have not read the things that I have read. They don't know the things that I know. Their idea of history generally goes back to like the 1800s, sometimes the 1700s. Their idea of deep history is the Renaissance. That's their idea of deep history. I'm not kidding.
Okay. I guess I just been out of it too long. I was isolated. Well, I guess I still am, but I don't talk to any young people. But okay, so there've been so maybe the collapse of the formal structures university doesn't mean that much because the content is already gone.
Yeah. Literally, that is the case. The reason that I have no problem, like I've said this on multiple occasions, I no longer have any respect for people with degrees. The only thing that I respect is how knowledgeable they are on a given subject. That's it. So if a person came up to me and it's like, I know a chick who had a Princeton degree and she had a manual labor job, it's like, well, whatever. It doesn't mean fucking anything at this point. Look at these people that have degrees from like Harvard or Berkeley or Yale or whatever. The ones that are coming out now. These are just a bunch of virulent...
Oh yeah, I love that. I don't know if you saw the tweet. The students at Harvard asking, I'm confused, which came first, the Renaissance or the Enlightenment?
There you go. Now that could be a joke, but the problem is that this...
It wasn't a joke, it was the actual question.
There you go, precisely, exactly. This is the problem. They are fucking retards. The only thing that they are learning about is how everything is racist. That's what their degree goes to now.
Well, then we get back to the point that was made by... They have a position in British universities for graduate school that's not... It doesn't exist in the US. It's called a tutor. But basically it's a methods class for first year of people writing their PhD. And then it'll last for like one semester, and then they don't have semesters. They last like 10 months or so, and then they're free for the next 2 years to just go right without any
I'm sorry,
further,
I'm sorry, I just gotta... So they were on for how many O-vesters? What was that?
the PhD takes 3 years.
Okay, but how many O-vesters is that?
What?
O-vesters, how many O-vesters is that? I'm sorry, but the word semester, semen, is too triggering for me. How many O-vesters is it?
Oh, well, they don't have... they do it by year. You start in October and you end in May.
Okay, well, that's not so patriarchal. All right, I'll take it. But anyway, go on.
All right, so the tutor for the first year there is basically methods on how, for the first year PhD writer. And the guy I had was an old school British guy named Peter Robb. He's actually an expert on Bengal. But he had the greatest line. It was, if your entire sum of everything you want to say is that colonialism is wicked, and you have nothing else to add, we can just write it on the whiteboard and we can retire to the pub.
Yeah. And that's basically... that sums up modern academia perfectly.
So they've just written racism is evil on the whiteboard. Meet us at the bar.
Well, it's going to cost several $1,000s before you go to the bar.
Expensive bar. High.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
Okay, it's going to be
cover charge.
It's
very high cover charge.
Yeah, it's going to be
$40,000 cover charge.
All right, so $40,000 cover charge, and if you're a chick, you get plowed for like 4 years, and you come out with tattoos. Yeah.
Yeah. I see. So you don't learn anything else. It's just the racism is bad on the whiteboard.
Yeah, but 4 years of that. And sex and drugs. That's basically it. I mean, that sounds hyperbolic on my part, but it kind of isn't.
Yeah. Well, then what are these lecturers that have taken my job at University of the US doing?
They're
classes?
Teaching everyone that racism is bad.
Yeah, but they can write that on the board. That takes 5 minutes.
Yeah, but they're willing to harangue people for like half an hour on it. Have you? You haven't.
Repeating it over and over again and paraphrasing it. You have,
because it's all based on feelings and anecdotes. It's not based on anything hardline or factual.
Yeah, I think I got a story for you. When I went to the genocide conference, we accidentally got stuck in one of the few, thank God, but it was still talks on the Holocaust. It was supposed to be on Yugoslavia, but it got shipped around on us, not to my knowledge. And for some reason, these women started crying and lament, like little tears and screaming. I couldn't understand what was going on, but I did understand that I was not fit to make any more choices about the next panel to go, and surrendered all my authority to my colleagues.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I had thought it was Yugoslavia, but it wasn't.
I just want to throw Sigs and Goads says that he graduated in 09 with a BA, and it was like that then. Sex, drugs, and white genocide. See, here's a guy that came out of university in 2009, and that actually does sound about correct, because the first time I was accused of having white privilege was in 2011, I think, by a black girl who was going to UCLA. At the time I was unemployed, and it was difficult for me to make ends meet and get food. So she was accusing me, an unemployed person, of having white privilege while she was having her UCLA classes paid for by her parents or whatever. And I threw that back at her, and she ended up leaving in a huff because she knew that I was right.
In 2009, I was out of the U.S. I had left. I was gone between 2007 and 2019.
A lot has changed since then. Like a lot. Yeah, Donald Robertson is saying that they are playing down the horrors of the Soviet Union. I can attest to this. A lot of people, I mean, my God, I was talking about communism and how I didn't like communism, and this kid, this was back in 2016, maybe 2017, he looked at me incredulously with the gaze that only an IQ 98 person can give you, and he said, communism, you make it sound like it's something other than just another ideology. Like, what do you say to that, you know? And technically, he's right.
I think that's a good comeback when somebody uses the word fascism or Nazi.
Yeah, no, I know.
Make it sound like it's something other than just another ideology.
Yeah, no, I know. I know. I went through the whole rigmarole with him and a bunch of other people, but every one of them, you know, communism isn't that bad. It was never applied properly, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's the big pile of skulls, and the first skull says, "Don't worry, it wasn't real communism." The second skull says, "Fuck off."
Yeah. Every time. No, I know, and that's what they're teaching in schools right now. And this is why my thinking is that we kind of have to let go of the millennials and just let them be the lost generation that they are. Even Gen X, my own. I mean, my God. I'm one of a few people that I know that decided to start reading things that one would have read in college. I did attend some college, but not that much. I found it to be largely a bore. In my own head, it was high school with ashtrays, so I got bored with it, and I realized after a certain point that I was paying teachers to tell me to read books. You know, at Goodwill Hunting, I was paying teachers to tell me to read books that I could just pick up for like $5. So it's like, whatever.
The old Frank Zappa line. If you want to learn, get a library card. If you want to get laid, go to college.
Exactly. Yeah, and the doughy-eyed idealist that I was, I decided that I was going to favor understanding and knowledge, because I got fed up with the teachers feeding me lines of bullshit. So I just abandoned it. You should have taken
some of my history classes. They weren't too bad.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's a little bit harder to get people like you into universities. So okay, so I hadn't realized that U.S. Level of education had deteriorated so badly. I thought there was still some sort of basic basic
common curriculum.
I'm sorry to say that's not the case.
I had deceived myself, perhaps.
Well, I mean, technically, yes.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mean to be, and this is why, when you tell me about things, or when you say the phrase, don't be so black-pilled like Eke, like, I'm like, oh, I mean, you're kind of right. I sometimes do come off as a bit of a Debbie Downer. I actually recognize that, but, like, this is the state of the world. This is just where we are. Yeah, people tell me, like, often, and they mean it, and I'm not, this is not a back pat for myself in the least. It's just an indicator of the state of where things are. I've had people tell me for like a decade, you should be a professor, you should be a teacher, why aren't you a teacher, you know so much. And it's like, holy shit, dude, all I did is fucking read a book, and I'm basically just parroting things back to you with maybe a couple of my own spins, like little observations here and there, and that's really about it.
What do you think lecturing is?
Well, no, I know, but the thing is that this is, for a lot of people, this is revolutionary. I frequently tell people things that their teachers never told them. And it's like, dude, that is a sorry fucking state of affairs. When some jerk-off like me, some lone autist, who live streams for a hobby, knows more about history than, rather, discusses more interesting things about history than what's being taught in university classes. Like, that's not good, and that's exactly where we are.
I mean, you will often find the absolute worst presentations are from the graduate students at the most prestigiously named universities. So when I went to this conference in Korea, the worst by far were the Ivy League students. I mean, it was just so bad. These guys coming from Harvard and Yale.
Yeah. Well, that's where we are now, so. And these are the people that are controlling institutions or whatever. Terrible news.
But speaking of higher education, I have a mentee now, not a history person. She's doing her PhD in a post-colonial literature, but she was assigned to me by some organization I'm going to a conference next year on. So I have a meeting with her by Zoom on Wednesday morning. We'll see how this goes.
I wish you all the best on that. Everyone, send Otto your energy right now.
So we'll see if I have any ability to direct students in the U.S. But I'm not sure how well this will go, being as that her specialty is post-colonial literature. She's originally from India, and she's been teaching Caribbean literature.
Well, I'm sure it's a varied and rich source of knowledge.
We'll see. I'm going to be optimistic about all of this.
Okay, I'll take it. Well, I hope that you put together a couple of presentations for us on YouTube so that at least 3 or 4 of us can.
Well, I don't know anything about literature, but we'll
right.
see.
Well, history.
I have I've supervised graduate students before when I was in Ghana. I only had one PhD student, but she actually turned out pretty good. But she was unusual in that she was an actual. She was a bit older, but she was an actual honest American black nationalist. She didn't have any of the liberal bullshit. She's basically a Malcolm X type, straightforward.
I'm actually okay with that. I'm increasingly cool with those
Well,
people.
I'm okay with it because it's honest. I mean, there wasn't any just. Everybody knew where they stood. So I could take that, right? And she was a good writer, so.
Yeah.
But she went on to do her PhD, finish her PhD elsewhere.
I should get some black nationalists on this channel.
Obsidian.
Yeah. Well, no, not him. He would just call me racist.
For a while,
and
he was
chuckle.
having everybody on the right on there. Richard Spencer never showed up, but Brundlefly was on his show.
Well, yeah, but the only thing that he
Andy
would,
Nowicki was on his show.
but he would just say, yeah, but you're a liar and an immoral racist, and then he would chuckle at himself, and that was his big comeback. That was all he ever did.
No, you're thinking of Real Brother Radio.
Oh, you're right. My apologies.
Obsidian actually was much more sophisticated and well read. Obsidian's main argument was that in Philadelphia, where he lived, or Chicago, David Duke was not the person that was going to kill them. It was not actually going to be a white guy at all that was going to be the threat to them in terms of their physical safety.
Who did he think it was going to be?
Well, there's obviously going to be Ray and Tyrone or whoever, yeah.
Well, at least there's a certain level of realism there.
Oh, Tom Anderson, Obsidian's channel got banned. Shit. I haven't listened to Obsidian in a long time. But... No, well, I don't know who else is out there on that side.
Yeah. I don't either, to be honest. I mean, I would have...
Quaidez Veritas says you should call Asata Shakur by Zoom in Cuba. I don't think people in Cuba have access to the internet.
Well, I'm sure they do, but you have to be...
No, I knew a German guy that taught in Cuba, and a Canadian guy too, and they said only foreigners were allowed access to the internet. You had to go to like a hotel,
Oh my
and
God.
you had to give your passport, and then it cost $5 an hour, which seems not too bad for us, but that was basically a month's wages.
Oh my God. So if you want to email somebody...
They either have to be in the Cuban government, or they could be a certain people at universities had access, but the normal person would not.
Oh my God. Yeah, my fear is that this is what we're gonna move to in America. That's my actual fear these days. All right, what are you gonna do? Anyway, in the next, I think, 20 minutes or so, I'm going to call a stream, just so you know. Cause I'm
All right, no problem.
a little bit tired, and I need to...
Yeah, actually, she was a Garveyite. Shogu King 66. She was doing her dissertation on Barbadian... Bayesian, I guess is the term. People from Barbados. Bayesian Garveyites who moved to Liberia in the 1920s.
Dude, Bayesian nationalism when?
Well, Barbados is tiny, but almost as many slaves were sent from Africa to Barbados as to the United States.
Where's Barbados?
Barbados is a tiny island in the... I can't remember. It's in the Ant. The islands that curve down the little one of the former British colony. I can't remember if it's the Leeward Islands or the Windward Islands.
Oh, yeah, there it is. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's small.
Yeah, it's right up against Venezuela, sort of.
Well, that's Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, yeah, I know. It's like 4 or 5 islands up from that, yeah.
Yeah. So it was like the island. So Barbados was a British sugar colony.
Yeah.
Along with Jamaica, which they took from the Spanish.
I know a guy that married a chick from Barbados, so I've known about it for a personal tie to it for quite some time, but I just never sadly I just never found myself terribly interested in Barbados.
It's one of the 3 campuses of West India University. The others are in Jamaica and Trinidad.
Jeez.
But anyway, I guess in the 1920s, a lot of people were moving, well, relatively, out of the island into Liberia.
Just looking at for some reason I find myself interested in the maps now of like that area. Okay, I'm done. I'm over it. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to do that anymore. Anyhow, so all right, coming all the way back to the concept of something that one can do. I do like the concept. I like the idea of. I like the idea of pointing out hypocrisies, firstly. Secondly, I like the idea of reading literature to little kids so that there is a Western canon that does move forward. We don't have people like...
You have scary stuff on your literature. Brothers Grimm. You probably have Lovecraft on there, too.
Well, yeah, you need Lovecraft.
Oh. It's like the Halloween night.
Yeah, that's what we need. We need to have more of this Western canon literature being put about. I have no interest, nothing against writers from this place or that, but we need Brothers Grimm. That's what we need. So okay. I like that. I'm trying to think of because I don't want to, with all of this sort of like black pilling earlier, oh my God, Western canon's being destroyed. Academia has been gutted to the point where we don't really have any common ground other than just racism or something. That's all very depressing to think about. So I'm trying to think about...
right, that takes 5 minutes, though. Write it on the whiteboard.
Right. So I want to think about ways to...
So there's no content.
I want to think about ways to deal with that so that we can move toward something that is positive and active. That's what I would prefer. So...
All right, so we're going to have Ecky's very scary collection of European and American literature, starring the Brothers Grimm, Edgar Allan Poe, Edward Scarry, and H.P. Lovecraft.
I'm generally down with that, yeah.
The kids are going to be scared shitless. They're going to be wondering about tentacled monsters under the bed.
Yeah, but they're gonna have like really vibrant imaginations, and they're going to be capable of really interesting thought patterns. So I'm okay with that.
Daddy, that guy with the small hat, I think he's really a space alien, amigo.
He came from Antarctica.
Yuga. The fungi came from Yuga.
The fungi? Are you talking about
Lovecraft?
The Mountains of Madness?
Whisper in the Dark.
Isn't Mountains of Madness? That's the one that's the thing was.
Mountains of Madness.
Who goes
they go
there?
to Antarctica.
No, who goes there? That's right. Who goes there? I forgot.
Whisper in the Dark is in Vermont. They have the big bloated bodies that keep showing up, but you can't photograph them. And they're like, it turns out they're from what we call Pluto and they call Yuga.
I love it.
But they're this fungi creature that have like fly through the space.
That's funny.
There's a good movie made on it. It's in black and white. I think they made it for $700 or something. It's on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the name of it
look
again?
Up Whisper in the Dark.
Whisper in the Dark. I might check that out. Type that in now. Whisper in the Dark. What a great title. What a great title for a book or a novel. Alright, there we go. Whisper in the Dark. There it is. Yeah, there's a version that was made in 2015, which I can't imagine is good. at all.
Is it black and white?
No. The black and white
This
one
one was
is...
in black and white.
Yeah, the black and
But
white...
it's fairly recent.
Yeah, the one in black and white is immediately below. So apparently you can oh, there's Whisper in the Dark 2 that was made in 2017. So apparently they've advanced from simply the first to a sequel. Some very intense things are happening right now in the Lovecraft world, as it turns out. All right. Well, I might go and check that out. The black and white one, obviously.
Yeah, but that's fairly recent. It just that they chose to do it in black and white to make it look like it was in the 1920s.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. We need more of that. We need more of this sort of stuff. Everyone in
There's
chat.
a hilarious video with there's a whole series of videos called the Eldritch Defense Force, but one of them is at the end of Shadow over Innsmouth, where the U.S. military bombs the hell out of Innsmouth and torpedoes the coral reef, and they put all the deep ones in internment camps. It's a 2-minute showing of it, like it's a World War II news reel.
And this is in what?
It's the end of the Shadow over Innsmouth.
That's right. I was going to read that. God, I've got too many things.
Well, actually, they talk about it in the beginning, but right at the very start, they talk before they go back. The very start, they talk about how Innsmouth ends. Right, it's attacked by the U.S. military, and they put the deep ones in internment camps. But this is like a World War II reel of the U.S. military doing that in 1927. It's like 2.5 minutes long.
Yeah.
But it's on a channel called Eldritch Defense Force. Well, I looked at these deep ones. They're kind of like modeled after the creature from the Black Lagoon, the way it's done in this film. And they really do look like these Antifa guys that you see on the Andy Knows Twitter feed.
Okay, I've got to find this. What was the name of the channel again?
Eldritch Defense Force.
Eldritch Defense Force.
I think so. Maybe it's not. Look up Eldritch Defense Force and you'll find it, though, because that's what they call these little. That's what they call the little films.
EDF, Eldritch Defense Force films. Oh, would you look at that? There's a crap load of these.
Yeah.
Oh, the raid on Innsmouth.
Yeah, that was the first one I discovered.
Kill it with fire.
That one's pretty good too.
There's a lot of these. Wow. All right. Yeah, this looks great. All right. This is going to be fun because I've been thinking about trying to take a break from some of the serious topics that I discuss on this channel and on my other DLive channel, and this seems like a really fun break. So I'm into it. Thank you. This is fantastic. Much better than watch reviews. So I'll take it. All right. I guess we're just about at 1:30 now. So
All right.
I think I'm going to go ahead and get ready to call a stream. Given the general topics, is there anything that you would like to leave us on or promote, or something that you want people to look into?
No, I don't think so. I don't have anything to promote right now.
Fair enough.
I'm not sure when my next publication will be out, but I do have one in the pipeline with the American Historical Society of Germans from Russia journal.
Well, that's good. When that is completed, or when you're ready to talk about it, I'd like to hear about it.
Okay, I mean, it's you can do that later because we're at the end here. And,
Yeah. Well, no, I mean not now. I'm just saying, at some point in time. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, cool. All right. Yeah. When that's when that's ready, let me know. I'd like to hear about it. So there you go.
All right.
All right. Cool. All right. Talk to you later. All right. That was Jonathan Pohl And even though that was a slightly upsetting discussion on a certain level, I mean, it's important to know what's going on. It's important to have an idea of, basically what the current circumstance is, because you cannot hope to deal with reality if you don't understand your situation. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, yeah, while I guess it is a little bit, a little bit upsetting, on the other hand, yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know. I'm going to go ahead and put out the link to the EDF, the EDF channel on YouTube. I'm going to be watching one or two of these while I have a little bit of lunch, so that's going to be what I do. And if anyone wants to check them out, well, there you go. So yeah, it's good to know what's going on in the world, and I do think that we need a common history, and we need a common set of reference points culturally. So I really do advocate that, number one, if you have the ability to have kids, do it. Number two, once you do, start reading them Brothers Grimm. Before anything else, start reading them Brothers Grimm, and also the Bible, especially the New Testament. And I think that's a great place to start. That way people have reference points. Read Galatians and get woke. Well, if your kids are reading Galatians at age 10, they will be pretty fucking woke pretty fucking fast. So do it. Make it happen. Make a new generation, you guys. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and say thank you, everyone in chat. Sorry about not checking in on chat more. I should have checked in on chat more. Ash All Day says check out the Henry Ford papers. Absolutely, everyone should definitely do that for sure. And thank you to Bearsingetrix for freaking me out briefly by indicating that maybe Cassio had been bought by the tribe. I'm shaking my fist spiritually right now. And I guess that about does it. Everyone, remember to floss your teeth, brush and floss your teeth. Definitely pick up a firearm while you can if you have the ability to do so. Now is a perfect time with all of the utter insanity coming down the pike. And if you can plant a garden, plant a garden. This is a brilliant time to plant a garden. So, there you go. Alright guys, I'm going to let out. Cheers, have a good one, and I'll see at least one or two of you later on tonight. Alright, cheers.